Hello and welcome to Run Testers. My name's Nick. In this video we're going to be comparing the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 and the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. The Endorphin Speed and the Endorphin Pro are the two shoes that have been present in the Endorphin lineup from the start, but they're now superseded by the Endorphin Elite carbon racing shoe. But in terms of their positioning, the Endorphin Pro is a racing shoe. It is a carbon plate racing shoe within the Endorphin line, whereas the Endorphin Speed is a fast training partner or kind of daily trainer all-rounder within the lineup. They're priced in line with their jobs. The Endorphin Pro is the more expensive shoe. It's £230 or $225, whereas the Speed is £180 or $170. The Pro is the lighter shoe. It's 233 grams or 8.2 ounces in a UK 9, whereas the Speed is 255 grams or 9 ounces in the same size. They've both got an 8mm drop, but the Pro has the higher stack height of 39.5mm at the heel and 31.5 at the forefoot, whereas the Speed is 36 at the heel and 28 at the forefoot. So there's lots of similarities between the two shoes, and going back through the generations there are even more similarities, but they have diverged a little bit over the past couple of years, and big difference is in the midsole. With the Saucony Endorphin Speed, you've not only got that lower stack, but you have a midsole entirely made from Saucony's Power Run PB foam with a winged nylon plate running through it. So it's a PB-based foam with a nylon plate there that's designed to have a bit more stability and be a little less stiff and harsh than the carbon plate you have in the Endorphin Pro, which has a dual density midsole, with the top layer being Saucony's Power Run HG foam. That's the firmer, bouncier foam you have from the Endorphin Elite, and then the bottom layer is Power Run PB, the same PB stuff that's in the Endorphin Speed, and you've got a full-length carbon plate running through that. Both shoes use Saucony's Speed Roll rocker to create a nice flowing ride, and they both have the new SRS sock liner that was introduced with the fourth generation of the shoes. That's a slightly more comfortable, bouncy sock liner material than you had on previous models. Both shoes have a lightweight mesh upper. You have more of a booty style fit on the tongue of the Endorphin Pro 4, which also has this nifty little fold over bit at the top, which we're all very big fans of. You've got a little bit more padding on around the tongue and collar of the Speed, as you'd expect from the slightly more training focused shoe, and in general the Endorphin Pro has the lighter, more breathable upper, but they both have pretty comfortable breathable uppers all round, I'd say. Then you've got a similar lattice rubber outsole on both shoes. It's a slightly different design to the previous models of the shoes that's designed to improve the grip a little bit. You've got pretty sparing coverage at the heel with just those strips, good forefoot coverage, cutouts on both shoes to reduce the weight, so it's a more extensive, deeper cutout on the Endorphin Pro, which obviously is aiming to be as light as possible as the racing shoe.
So when it comes to fit, I have run in a UK 8.5, which is my regular running shoe size in Saucony shoes. The main difference, I think, between the Speed 4 and the Pro 4, I think the Pro 4, surprisingly for a carbon racer, which you normally expect to be a little bit more dialed in, a little bit more snug and hugging, they're actually a little bit less than the Speed 4. The Speed 4 feel a little bit more secure. I think there's a little bit less room in the toe box of the Speed 4. It's not huge, but there is a kind of a little bit tighter across the top of the toes. I think overall there's a bit more room for wiggle and flex in the Pro 4, but overall I think the fit on these has been good. I've got a good hold. I did have to adjust the lacing a little bit on the Pro 4 to make them, fit right, but once I've got that sorted, actually they've held really well across the midfoot. I like the fact there's a bit of room up front, and overall I would recommend going true to size in both of these shoes.
Okay, so the fit for me in these two shoes, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, I'm a size 8 in the UK, this is a size 8. I would stay to my size in this shoe. What I would say is, if you know about previous Speeds, the Speed 3 was a very roomy shoe in comparison to the Speed 2, and some people had issues with that, especially if you had narrow feet. You might have found that there was just too much space in the upper front of the shoe in the Speed 3. So it was quite hard for people to get a lockdown fit, and it felt a little bit unstable for some people. This seems like it's a narrower fit and more like the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2. So if that's a problem for you, you might prefer this shoe, and the fit's probably going to be better for you. But I would stick to my size in the Speed 4. Saucony Endorphin Pro 4, pretty much the same really. Definitely stay to my size in this shoe. I ran hundreds of miles in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 and it fit me absolutely perfectly. I had no issues. This feels exactly the same to that. I've not had any real noticeable differences. The only thing I would say about this shoe is that this upper in it is a little bit, how would I describe it? It doesn't feel very reinforced. So it does feel like there's a bit more space in it, and it's quite hard to get a lockdown fit in this shoe. I wouldn't say it's a massively roomy shoe. I just think this upper is very flexible and doesn't really hold the foot down easily. So as a result, you really have to play around with the lacing system to get a good lockdown fit. Sometimes I was getting it too tight. Sometimes it was just felt a bit loose. So getting it right is a bit tricky. The other thing as well is these laces have these stretchy laces. And sometimes when I tie them into a bow, I'd realise that because of the extra give in the laces, it would actually have a bit more space in it, so then I have to retie them. But I would stick to my size, because once you get that fit perfect, it's fine, and it's not really an issue once you work out how to do it. But I would say to my size in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4.
Comes to the fit of the shoes, I've got the same size in both. I've got a UK 9, which is a US 10. It's the same size I've had across the generations of both the Pro and the Speed, and it is the right size for me. I would say stick to your normal running shoe size. The length of both shoes is good. I find that the Endorphin Speed is a little bit wider in the way it fits than the Pro, but unlike the previous model, the Endorphin Speed 3, which I found a little bit too wide for me, I have quite a narrow foot, and I had some heel slippage with one shoe and just general a bit too much room. It's been okay with the Endorphin Speed 4. I've not had heel rub with either shoe. I've been able to just use normal lacing techniques, and I find that the fit is really good in my normal running shoe size with both.
Okay, so these two shoes are shoes that I'm a big fan of, both of these. I'm pleased to say that I really like the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. I think it's a nice progression from the 3. I wouldn't say improvement, because I think the 3 has some elements that are probably more applicable to some people than the 4. This new layer of HG foam in the midsole of the Pro 4, I do think it changes the ride a very little bit. I think it makes it skew a little bit more towards faster running. I think there's a little bit more responsiveness in it. And I do feel like it really comes into its own when you pick up the pace in it. Also, I feel like when you're going at a slower pace, I don't think it quite has the softness and the comfort of the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3, but only a tiny bit. I mean, the difference between them is marginal. I haven't ran a marathon in these yet, so I'll see what that's like when I do Boston. Hopefully I'll be using this one if everything goes well. But what I would generally say is that it's very similar to the Pro 3, but that HG foam does change it slightly. It also has this sock liner in that's designed to be a little bit bouncier. It doesn't necessarily make it softer. I do think gives it a little bit more energy return on the forefoot when you're picking up the pace. But I didn't massively notice it in comparison to the Pro 3. The Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, very similar ride to what I've experienced in all of the other earlier versions of the shoe. It's very much a daily shoe that can do a lot of stuff. You can run faster pace in this. You can do relatively easy miles in it, but it's just a great all-rounder. And it's very similar to the previous versions of the shoe. Not any massive differences for me. I would say that the midsole, I felt it was a little bit firmer when I've been testing it over the last 4 or 5 runs that I've done in this shoe. But I think that's probably just because it's wearing in, and it's only minimal as well. So I don't notice a massive difference in this shoe at all from what I've experienced in the 2 and 3, apart from that fit in the upper, which is noticeably different in the Speed 3. So both of these shoes I have done a variety of runs in. The Pro 4 I have done intervals in, and I have done a 21-mile marathon training session, which included 5 times 3 miles at marathon pace, which I didn't succeed in doing because my legs were wrecked, but it was great for that. It really comes into its own when you pick up the pace, and it just, more so than the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3, it just feels like it wants to run a little bit faster. And once you start getting onto that forefoot, I think that HG foam really kicks in, and you can feel a little bit more pop and a bit more responsiveness from that foam. The Saucony Endorphin Speed 3 I've used for intervals, and I've used for longer runs. I've used for easy runs. It's great. You can still do a lot of stuff in it. It's exactly what you'd expect from the Speed line, and it's very, very versatile. Running at faster pace in this feels really, really good. And I've got nothing surprising to come back with off the back of the Speed 3. So both of them I've been very impressed with. The outsole on these shoes, it's very similar actually. That has this new lattice or waffle design on the outsole. I have had no issues with it on either of these shoes. They both feel like they've got a really good grip on the ground, and I've been running on a lot of wet road at the moment. So solid outsole on them as well.
So I've done over 50k of running in both of these shoes over the past couple of months during my marathon training. I've also tested all the past generations of both shoes. shoes, and I've been a pretty big fan of both shoe lines since the originals came out a few years back. First two generations of the Endorphin Speed and Pro, I'd say they were very similar. You had the same stack height, same materials, you just had the carbon plate in the Pro, and that just created that stiffer, slightly harsher ride. I think it did give it a little bit of an edge over short distance speed in particular, but actually I think in the first two generations you can make the case that the Speed was the better shoe in general, especially for long distance racing or for most people, just because it was a little bit more comfortable while still being nice and poppy. I think things diverged a bit with the third generations of the shoes. The Endorphin Pro got a higher stack, became lighter, bouncier, just in general a really proper carbon racing shoe that had more comfort than the previous models, whereas the Endorphin Speed probably moved a little bit more the other way, where it became slightly wider, slightly softer around the heel, and became a bit more daily trainery, I'd say. Well, while it was still very versatile, I think there was a bit more of a gap between the shoes, and you could really see that you had the daily trainer and the racer, and I think that's continued with the fourth generation of the shoes, and actually gap has widened a little bit more. A lot of that is down to the layer of power on HG foam you have in the Endorphin Pro now, which does give it a poppier, faster ride, especially off the forefoot. I found I've used this for some really tough long workouts in marathon training, and I think there's no bottoming out at all. It's really comfortable for out workouts, and you still get that responsive feel, especially from the forefoot with that HG foam deep into workouts. I've done a couple of really long workouts. One was I did 10k at my marathon goal pace of 3:30 a k park run, and then 8k at marathon goal pace straight after the park run, and you really feel like you're getting the support and efficiency benefits of a full carbon racing shoe with the Endorphin Pro, with an extra pop and punch from that new foam on top there. Whereas I felt maybe with the Endorphin Pro 3 at times it would just lose a little bit of that punch from the Power Run PB foam alone at the end of long runs. Whereas the Speed 4 I think is pretty similar to the Endorphin Speed 3. I think the Pro 4 has got that little bit of an upgrade on the Pro 3 and become that little bit faster and more aggressive, whereas the Speed 4 feels quite a lot like the Speed 3 for me. Maybe they've widened out the back a little bit more even, and it's slightly more comfortable, but I still think it's a very versatile shoe, but it definitely now feels to me like a do-it-all super trainer. Definitely do fast workouts in this. I've enjoyed doing like long, steady runs and like shorter workouts in this shoe, but it also really can handle easy paces very well. It's really nice to cruise around in at a very relaxed pace. It's got a real do-it-all vibe, and I think it works very well in partnership with a shoe like the Endorphin Pro, because when it comes to those faster efforts, the Pro definitely has the edge for me, whereas like I say, in the first couple of generations of the Speed, Pro was a little bit faster, but I think over long distances I'd probably have taken the Speed. Now you get that real step up in pace, I think, with the Endorphin Pro, thanks to the Power on HG foam, the lighter setup, the more racy feel all round. I'll also say that the Pro is quite a comfortable shoe just for mooching around, and it is probably the most versatile carbon shoe. Like, it feels, because it's not really soft and springy and wobbly and all that, it's got that rocket ride that is quite stable. I think it is one of the more accessible super shoes out there, and you can use it for daily training. I still wouldn't. I think the Speed certainly is a level up in terms of comfort and how it feels at relaxed paces. It really cruises through very nicely and ticks over, even in like recovery run pace, then does have that pop to push it up a step if you are going to do faster runs in it. I'd say the difference in stack heights is noticeable under the forefoot for me though. Like, if I do a hard run in the Endorphin Speed, like kind of about 10 miles steady, something like that, or pushing beyond like kind of 20k overall, I can feel under the forefoot there's less foam than on the Endorphin Pro, which is very comfortable, like whatever distance you're pushing to. With the Speed, like if I'm going to run hard for a long period, I get a slight touch of forefoot discomfort. It's not a problem at all, really. I'd be happy to use the shoe for long distance races and that kind of thing, but it does show, I think, the extra foam you get in the Pro does add that element of protection under the forefoot, an extra bounce under the forefoot, which you don't get quite so much from the Speed. And the fact it's lighter with that extra stack really does help with positioning it as a racer compared to the Speed. When I ran in both shoes briefly at the same time, you really could feel all those elements come into place. You've got the softer landing at the heel with the Speed, and the slightly wider design of the Speed, and the way it turns over is quite similar to the Pro, but then you get a fair bit more punch off the toes from the Pro. Feels lighter, feels nimbler, feels racier, all kind of things that you would expect on paper that weren't necessarily true though with the early generations of the shoe. And the Speed has that more do-it-all edge to it, a little bit more of a relaxed feel, but if you want the punch and the aggression, I think the Pro definitely provides it.
Now in testing, I've run well over 60 miles in the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. I've done north of 40 miles in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. I've put Saucony's two fast plated shoes through very similar tests from all out intervals up to marathon pace runs and longer, slower efforts. Most of my miles were on the road, but some of them also took in light off-road river paths, which I find is a really good test for the durability and stability of the shoes. I also did one marathon training interval session, which consisted of half a dozen reps at 5 minutes 49 per mile pace, and halfway through I swapped the Speed 4 out for the Pro 4. I also did a side-by-side mile with one shoe on each foot to tease out the differences between the shoes. Now on those interval reps, I was really surprised to find that the Endorphin Speed 4 gave me a snappier, more responsive ride overall. They felt faster, more efficient, and when I swapped into the Endorphin Pro 4, they felt a little soft, a little less immediate by comparison. It was a bit harder work to maintain the pace in the Pro 4, and I certainly didn't get that leg sparing benefit that you expect from a lot of carbon races where they're kind of almost punching you along and giving you extra in each stride. There's more cushioning here for sure in the Pro 4, and it feels softer in the landings. There's a little more bounce in the midsole, I find, for the way that I run when that kind of midsole eventually returns, but I'm not sure that really translates overall into a more efficient ride for the way that I run, at least. You're not getting that propulsion that you might get from livelier carbon racers. Now, to illustrate that, I certainly wouldn't want to run too far with an Alpha Fly on one foot and a Speed 4 on the other foot. You would really notice the difference. But with the Pro 4 Speed 4 combo, the difference actually was far more subtle. It wasn't that pronounced. I could run further in those two shoes. The Endorphin Speed 4 is stiffer and firmer. It relies a lot more, I think, on the rock ring, and that firmer platform for me makes it a more stable ride than the Pro 4, which has a little more wobble in that kind of softer midsole. There is potential benefit to that softer Endorphin Pro ride though. It certainly look after you better than most carbon running shoes deep into longer races from that perspective of kind of cushion comfort and road protection and fighting kind of foot fatigue. That's really great news if things get strained at mile 22 of a marathon, for example. The Speed 4 might not be quite as protective deeper into longer time on feet. However, when it comes to comfort on the foot, that general comfort, I think there's very little to choose here. Both offer good, reliable, disappearing feel on the foot. I don't think you notice the weight difference between the two shoes that much either.
So my verdict is that these are two shoes that both do their job really well. Speed is the all-rounder, and I think it is the best all-rounder on the market from any brand. Still, I think it's got a slightly more relaxed feel than some of the early models of the shoe, which some people won't like if they preferred the racier feel, maybe the Endorphin Speed 1 and 2, but I still think this has plenty of pace. I've been very happy doing hard workouts in this shoe, and it now has a slightly more relaxed, comfortable feel for rolling through easy runs as well. It's a brilliantly versatile shoe, does that job fantastically well. The Pro 4 is a very good carbon racing shoe. It's giving you the efficiency benefits you expect, gives you quite a natural ride for a super shoe. It's more reliant on its rocker than any particularly bouncy or soft foams. It just really does propel you on your way though, and with that layer of HG foam, I think it is a more effective, efficient racing shoe than the Endorphin Pro 3, and it does hold its pace over long workouts a bit better. If you look at the market at large, the Speed 4 is more of an outstanding option within its bracket of shoes than the Pro 4. Like if you look at other super trainers, other versatile all-rounders with the plate, I think the Speed 4 is the best available. I think the closest competition is probably the Endorphin Speed 3, and if you can find that shoe at a hefty discount, I'm happy to recommend getting that instead of the Endorphin Speed 4, but it does stand out. Like there are some other really good super trainers out there, like the Adidas Boston 12 and the Asics Magic Speed 3, but I don't think any of them offer quite the level of versatility you get from the Speed. Then if you look at the carbon shoe market, it's a bit trickier for the Endorphin Pro 4, I'd say. I think it's a really good carbon shoe, and it does stand up well with loads of other options. I think, like I said before, it's a slightly more accessible option than many of the others, and it will work really well for lots of people who maybe find overly soft shoes or overly aggressively rocketed shoes a bit too much and they don't really work for them. It's got quite a natural feeling while still being very, very fast. There are some super shoes though that I prefer, like straight up. I think the Nike racing shoes, the Vaporfly and the Alpha Fly 3 are both a little bit better in terms of pure performance. I really like the new Asics Meta Speed Sky Paris as a lighter, punchier race shoe as well. So I think there are lots of shoes you could pick from in the carbon bracket. There are as good, and there are a few I think are better than the Endorphin Pro 4, whereas with the Speed, I do think it is the standout option in its bracket. When you're looking at past generations, the Pro 4 is more of an upgrade on the Pro 3 than the Speed is on the Speed 3, so maybe that's something to consider. Like you could go and get the Endorphin Pro 3, though I think it is a great racing shoe. I just think you get a bit more punch from the Pro 4 when you're going into those long events or long workouts. So yeah, I think overall the Speed 4 is the more accomplished shoe. It's the one I would put in my rotation of these, and I'd probably then pair it with a different carbon racing shoe, like I say, like the Alpha Fly or the Asics Meta Speed shoes, just because I think they're a little bit more aggressive and to my taste than the Endorphin Pro 4. But I do think this is an outstanding racing shoe, and if you went with an all Endorphin rotation, you could pretty much have a two-shoe rotation, and you'd be very well set for races of any distance with the Endorphin Pro and training runs of any type with the Endorphin Speed. But in terms of comparing the two shoes, they are different shoes that do their jobs really well, whereas the past was a lot of overlap. I think very clearly now the Speed 4 is a very good daily trainer, but if you want the pace of a racing shoe, you would go and get the Endorphin Pro 4.
Okay, so my verdict on these two shoes, they're not really designed for the same purpose, but if you were picking up one of these shoes and you wanted to just train fast in it and maybe race in it, which is sort of why you might buy either of these shoes, I would definitely go for the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. I just find it to be a really comfortable, enjoyable, fast shoe that is very, very accessible. It's well worth getting if you're new to racing and you want to pick up a carbon racer, but you're a bit worried about getting something that is probably a little bit too aggressive. You definitely wouldn't go for something like the Saucony Endorphin Elite, or maybe the Alpha Fly 1 or 2. It's a shoe that really just, for anyone, they can put the shoe on, it feels good straight away. You can jog in this shoe and it feels pretty good. And obviously you can pick up the pace in it and it just does the job. So it's a great natural feeling, comfortable shoe that really does have good performance benefits in it. Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 is still a fantastic all-rounder that does it all. I think the market's got a little bit tricky now because there's some really good plated daily trainers out there that are great options, as well as the Speed. When the earlier Speeds came out, it really was the clear winner when it came to versatile, fast daily trainers. But now there's quite a lot out there. And some aren't even plated. So still a great option. I think it really comes down to what you want to use. I mean, I would, if you're racing in the shoe, I'd still go for the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. If you're using it purely for training, you're not racing in it, I'd go for the Speed 4. And also the price is obviously a big price difference as well. But when it comes to racing, I'm going Pro 4 all the time.
Verdict then, and what I think you've got here are two extremely capable shoes that are very happy at marathon pace and faster. The Endorphin Pro 4 is more cushioned, it's more bouncy. The Speed 4 is still energetic, but it's firmer, it's snappier, it's more immediate. There's a responsive ride to this shoe. The Endorphin Pro 4 is less aggressive, more cushioned, stable for a super shoe ride. I think will suit a lot of marathon runners who want a shoe that they can rely on from the first mile to the last on marathon race day, but it's not the punchiest carbon race you can get. If you're looking for that all-out raciness, there are better shoes like the Alpha Fly, the Adios Pro 3, the Strung X2, those kind of shoes. And while those rival carbon shoes are a sizable step up from the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, the difference between the Pro 4 and the Speed 4 is much more subtle. I think you can get the same performance from the Endorphin Speed 4 for much less moolah, much less spend, and that's in a shoe, I think, with the Speed 4 that can be used for racing and training. Speaking of which, I think both shoes can cater for faster training and racing. The Speed 4 offers marginally more versatility when it comes to ticking over the slower miles, though, I would find. Putting budget to one side, if you're looking for a shoe to tackle faster training runs and races, I think the decision comes down to this. If you like a little more cushion, go for the Endorphin Pro 4. If you like a faster, slightly more direct response, go for the Endorphin Speed 4. Choice for me, I'd go Speed 4 all day long.
That's our comparison of the Endorphin Speed and Endorphin Pro 4th generations. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.